Okay, told you that pretty much everything ends with a semicolon. You do have some options to go into multiple lines if necessary, but you generally end the commands with a semicolon. Comments are something that programmers often use to describe what a variable, and not only what a variable is being used for, but also what they're doing in other parts of the program as well. Most languages, including JavaScript, support two different types of comments. One is the single line comments, which always begin with a double forward slash, and the other is multi-line comments, which begin with a slash asterisk and are closed with an asterisk slash. Again, we'll see some comments of all that in a moment. Formatting one of the delimiters of a multi-line comment or forgetting one of the delimiters of a multi-line comment is a syntax error. Actually, it could result in the entire program not running. Nesting multi-line comments, i.e. placing multi-line comments between the delimiters of another multi-line comment, is a syntax as well. You can't nest them. Comments are designed for people, programmers, to see. They're not designed for the JavaScript interpreter to execute. They are there for other people to comment or document what you did so that you or someone else will understand it when they look at it at some time in the future. There's a prompt method that allows you to get input from the user. It's very simple text data, and it can be used in your scripts. You generally have to assign a variable to that prompt, and whatever they type in there will actually be stored. You can place spaces on either side of the binary operator. Not required, but you can do it. Does make it a little more readable, though, so it's probably a good idea. Okay, user input. The null character signifies the user has no value. The variable has no value. It's not a string. It is just a null value, an actual special character. Normally, when you use the input option to input a value, it always inputs it and stores it as a string. Now remember, string data is different than non-string data. Okay, it's different. String data and non-string data are different. We talked about that in the binary, how the number one and the character one are two different things. So, and if everything is input and stored in the variable as string from input, if you want to use it as a number, particularly an int, you have to convert it to an int. Sometimes JavaScript will do an implied conversion, but the safest thing to do is to use this function that's built into JavaScript called parseInt. We'll see an example of that in a moment. JavaScript has a version of the plus operator for string concatenation, which we already saw when we did strings on multiple lines, that enables a string and a value of another data type, including a string, to be concatenated. Gets confusing if you start looking at the plus sign for string concatenation with the plus sign for addition. So, for example, let's say I want to input something. I can say var num equals prompt, enter a number, and then num is equal to parse int num. You can do this, by the way, and say alert your number plus 10 is plus num plus 10. So let's see what we get when we do this. Enter a number. So I'll put 2. Your number plus 10 is 210. That doesn't make sense, does it? close that. The reason that happened is because the plus sign is what we would call an overloaded operator. When you're concatenating it with when you're using it with a string, it acts as concatenation, or combining two strings together into one string. When you're using it with all numeric values, it does addition, mathematical addition. Well, the problem is, what happens when you combine strings and numbers together with a plus sign? Well, JavaScript does what all languages does, and it goes to the lowest common denominator. Because a string can hold any character on your keyboard, it automatically converts the numbers to string, and they get concatenated, not added. So how do you fix this? Well, you fix it the way you force any operation to happen in an order you want it to happen in, even if that's not its normal way. In math, you do that with what? Parentheses. So if I put num plus 1 in parentheses, we know that changes the order of operations. This now will get added first, and then it'll get concatenated to the string. That's a little better. Your number plus 10 is 12. Right? That's exactly what it should be. So if we look at that, the prompt, and I could say, I could put a single line comment. Okay, now convert it to a integer. And multi-line comments could be, maybe at the top of the program you'll put something like /*, author, Bob Timlin, written 9/21/2011, version 1.0. Okay, so these are multi-line comments. This is a single line comment. We refresh the browser, you never see that stuff that I've got there. You never see it anywhere. That's because they're comments. Comments are not designed to be read by computers. They're designed to be read by humans. Now this thing is doing a similar thing, except it's prompting me for a name, which could happen as well, just as easily. We did a number and we did some addition to show you how some of that stuff works. Could have done that as well. Prompt for my name, and then display a message. Hello, Jim. Welcome to the programming. Different parts of it are the prompt that you can give it, and the OK button sends whatever they type in here back, and cancel would cancel it. It would send a null back if it's canceled. Okay, so this is a similar thing. It's saying creating a couple of variables. So it's saying 2. So basically, now I took some shortcuts. I reused the num variable, which JavaScript lets you do. You don't have to do that. Say 1. This is essentially what they're doing here. And of course, I'm doing it all in one line too, which is not usual, not the way you usually do it. Of course, we could leave this off too. We could say something like, okay, so it could do something like this. Let's see how that works. 5 and 6. Hello, Bob. Welcome to JavaScript programming. The sum of your numbers is 11. Which I think is pretty similar to what they're doing, something similar, getting a couple of numbers, adding them together, and displaying it out. Variable names correspond to locations in the computer's memory. So they're essentially an area of memory. Remember we looked at the binary, we talked about the zeros and ones. All memory is stored that way, and everything you type in here is translated that way. It's stored in memory, and the variable name is simply a reference to that area in memory. Right, so you think of a variable and a little block in memory in your 4 gigabytes of RAM. That's 4 little bytes there out of 4 gigabytes. It's just a very small amount. And a second variable will take another little 4 bytes of memory, since the number. And the sum will be another 4 bytes. JavaScript does not require variables to have a type before you're using a program. We say JavaScript is called a loosely typed language, which means JavaScript will automatically try to convert to a different type based on the data entered. So usually it will try to convert numbers to just that, numbers. If it can't figure it out, it stores it as a string, because a string is pretty much a universal data type. And if there's no value at all, it uses the null, which basically means no value. Your basic arithmetic operators, the plus and minus, you probably notice. In algebra, it's a asterisk. Sorry about that. It's an asterisk for multiplication and a / for division. Then the percent sign is for what they call the modulus, or the remainder of dividing two numbers. So the remainder operator is the percent sign. So you know that if you divide 5 by 2, the remainder would be 1. So if you do 5% 2, the result would be 1, the remainder of dividing 5 by 2. Arithmetic expressions in JavaScript must be written straight line form, just like algebra, almost like straight line algebra form, to facilitate entering programs into the computer. There's a comparison. Arithmetic plus sign in algebra would be f plus 7, will translate to f plus 7 as well. Subtraction, multiplication, a couple of different ways of doing it. So you can see the translation tables, the division, and the modulus. So you can see the algebraic expression equation equivalent. Parentheses are used in math problems just like they're used in algebra. They change the order of operation. You know the order of operation: multiplication and division and remainder are applied first. Then it reads left to right, and then addition and subtraction are done next. If you want to change that order of operation in math, you use parentheses. If you want to change that order of operation in your computer program, you use parentheses. So the arithmetic rules in computers are exactly the same as they are in regular math. And use parentheses for any complex. It's easier just to use parentheses for complex stuff.